This week's episode of the And She Looked Up podcast is brought to you by Fine Lime Designs. If the name sounds familiar, that's because it's my design business and the work I do there helps make this podcast possible. If you love colorful and whimsical art prints, greeting cards, and journaling stickers, then head over to my Etsy shop for a delightful browse. Just search for Fine Lime, like the fruit, designs, all one word, on Etsy, or click the link in the show notes. And now, on with this week's episode. Welcome to the And She Looked Up podcast. Each week, we sit down with inspiring Canadian women who create for a living. We talk about their creative journeys and their best business tips, as well as the creative and business mindset issues all creative entrepreneurs struggle with. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and after leaving a 20-year career in corporate retail, I've been happily self-employed for 12 years. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator, and a multi-six-figure-a-year entrepreneur in the digital content space. This podcast is for the artists, the makers, and the creatives who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the And She Looked Up podcast. As always, I'm your host, Melissa, and this week my guest is Kristen Raney. Welcome to the show, Kristen.
Thanks so much, Melissa. Glad to be here.
I am glad to have you here. So, if you're listening and Kristen's name sounds familiar, that's because she was a guest actually quite recently, in early December on episode 86. And so Kristen she used to be a professional singer and voice coach, but now she is an urban gardener who runs a small-scale flower farm. She's a floral artist and a content creator. You can find her at Shifting Roots and Shifting Blooms. I think Shifting Blooms just got a brand new website, too.
It did. It's finally not piggybacking off of Shifting Roots anymore.
And so today we're going to be talking about ebooks. And this kind of came out of a conversation Kristen and I had after we finished recording back in December. We just sort of went down the ebook rabbit hole, and we thought it would be a really great episode. So for those of you who don't know, I'm an ebook designer. I'm not Kristen's ebook designer, but Kristen, one of the things that got me really interested in talking to her is she has a really robust ebook program and ebook marketing strategy. And I thought it would be really interesting to share that with all of you, because ebooks can be a very powerful way to establish yourself as a thought leader, to reinforce your brand, to build community, and to generate another revenue stream. And I'm all about multiple revenue streams, so
Me too. I'm so excited to talk to you about this subject, because I think what you offer people with your ebook services is just so much more accessible, because not everybody is good at graphic design, and I think that holds a lot of people back.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about all of that. This is going to be more of a conversation between me and Kristen than an interview, because I interviewed her last time she was on the show. And I will put a link to Kristen's previous episode in the show notes, so you can go back and give that a listen to. But so today we're going to be talking about ebooks. And I just want to sort of reinforce the point that you don't have to just be a content creator to have ebooks as a revenue stream. There's lots of different ways that you can use this to bring in more money, or to bring in a new audience, or to solidify your relationship with your existing audience or customers or clients. So let's get into it.
All right, sounds good.
So Kristen, what was the first ebook that you made, and why did you think that might be a good idea?
So the first ebook I made was called Savvy Seed Saving, and I made it because I was getting lots of questions about seed saving in general, and I personally wanted to seed save my cut flowers, because to buy all the cut flower seeds is a lot of money every year. And I thought, like, if I could save myself a couple of bucks, that would be amazing. And I was also noticing that I had different plants that were sort of ready to be seed saved and different ones that weren't. And so I figured I could make kind of a picture book of how to seed save that wasn't super technical, but that I would put every stage of the plant from like this is a full flower to sort of halfway in between, almost ready to save seeds from, to this is when you harvest the seeds and this is what the seeds look like. And it's not like one of my best selling books, but the people who bought it were so thrilled because nothing like that really existed. Every other seed saving book out there is so technical. So, yeah, and it was a great lead up into my second one, Cut Flowers Made Simple, which ended up being like my home run.
So it basically came out of a response to people asking you a question over and over again.
Yeah, and it was just too big of a topic for one blog post.
Right. And the fact that you used a lot of visuals. This is something that I think a lot of people think is that an ebook has to be full of text.
Oh, definitely not. I would
No.
say every single one of my ebooks is way more pictures than text. And that's like also what people know me for as a blogger. When they come to my blog, there's a lot of pictures. And I'm sure like my web host hates it, but my readers love it.
Yeah, and I mean, you're very visual in that you're also a YouTuber too. So I think people kind of associate that with you is that there's going to be pictures or there's going to be video, like it's going to be as opposed to reading a lot of text.
Exactly. And your ebooks don't have to be long. Like I think my longest ebook is 95 pages, but most of them are sort of around the 50 to 70 mark.
And mostly visuals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not as arduous as you would think.
No, so I think one of the points is you don't need to be like an author.
No, definitely not. I mean, if you have a friend who is good at editing, it always helps.
Mm.
But I
Hmm.
mean, I pushed those first drafts of my ebooks out. They could desperately use an edit. No, nobody cares. Nobody has come back to me and said, like, oh, you should really edit your ebook.
Well, this is one of the beauties of ebooks, depending on how you sell them, but you can go back and edit, and the people who've previously bought can get the new, updated, edited version in many instances. So that's something I don't think people need to worry about as much as they think they do.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have a lot of clients who sell through like Gumroad or Share a Sale, so they may not even be selling their ebooks on their web, like through their website. They're
Oh,
using a third party.
no, I started through Sendowl. It was very easy to do.
Yes, that's the one I was trying to think of. I said share a sale, I think, but I meant send out.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Although one thing I would say is if you're going to sell ebooks, definitely have some sort of a backup system for people to get your ebooks. Because I would find with Sendowl that, I don't know, about 20% of the people who bought a book from me didn't get the email with the link,
Hmm.
didn't see the download button. It's something I'm still struggling with. Like sometimes people just don't see that download button,
Hmm.
don't see that email. So like, have something so that your customer knows where to get a hold of you to like send another link.
Yes, yes, that's really important. We'll get into that when we start talking about the platforms and places you can sell.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the beautiful things is that most of the platforms, when you update the book, your previous customers have an opportunity to download an updated version. So don't feel like you have to be perfect the first time out of the gate. Because I think that's something that holds a lot of people back
Oh,
is
100%.
yeah. So the first book, this the seed collection book.
Yes.
I am very tongue tied this morning. I don't know what's going on. How well did that do in terms of like sales without being? You don't have to go into specific numbers, but
Oh, no, no problem. I guess by like typical terms, that book was a failure. It had sold maybe 10, 15 copies its first week. And, throughout the years, It's still not a big seller, but when I wrote it, it was never meant to be
Hmm.
one of my big sellers. I knew I was going to write a cut flower book, and for me, that ebook was going to be like an add-on to a bigger package. But it was just the point in the season when it made the most sense to write it, so I just wrote it.
Yeah, for sure. I would imagine that's something with gardening that you have to be aware of,
Oh, yes.
especially if you need to take pictures. So, that first experience with writing that book, I'm just curious if you had a strategy in mind before you even put that book out, or if it was really just like, oh, people are asking me for this. Let's just try it and see what happens.
I think there was a bit of a strategy because I had previously made a course about just general gardening. And the sales were really terrible. And I just said to myself, like, why am I paying this monthly fee to Teachable and nobody's buying this course? Like, clearly this isn't working. So I knew I was going to turn that course into an ebook. And in my mind, I wanted this whole suite of ebooks so that whenever somebody came to my site, no matter what pillar of content they were coming to, there would be something to purchase.
Yes. And when you said, I think you mentioned that in the last episode that you were on, and that was what really twigged my brain
Mm.
when we were talking, was this idea that no matter where people land in your sphere, whether it's on your website, your
Yeah.
YouTube channel, your Instagram account, there is something there that they can potentially purchase if they feel so inclined.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a unique problem, but when I started blogging, I listened to people that were like, oh, collect email addresses, build your traffic. But then I realized after a point, so I have all these email addresses, I have all this traffic, and I have nothing for anyone to buy.
Yes, I think we get so wrapped up in numbers, traffic numbers, email
Yes.
subscribers, and we don't actually think like, what are we supposed to do with all of this? Like, what does it mean? Especially when it comes to revenue. And I think digital content creators, bloggers, and YouTubers are now far more familiar with the idea that they can monetize through ad revenue.
Yes.
But that becomes very dangerous in its own way because it's essentially putting all your revenue eggs in one basket, which is great when you're making a ton of money from it. But I've just been in the content creation world long enough to know that ad revenue cometh and goeth.
Oh my goodness, when COVID happened and everybody's ad revenue plummeted.
Yes.
I mean, I was very lucky being in the gardening niche that my ad
Mm.
revenue, like the RPMs plummeted, but it sort of evened out because everyone was suddenly interested in gardening and food security. So my traffic went up and it worked out. But I mean, those poor travel bloggers.
Yes. And I think a
God.
lot of them realized that, okay, this is not safe. I need to come up with other ways to earn revenue. And so, creating digital products is sort of a next step, but it's one we just don't tend to think about until we're sort of faced with the whole issue of needing more money to come in the door.
Oh, exactly. And in my case, my money for the business comes in waves, right? Because it's a
Hmm.
very seasonal niche.
Hmm.
So ebooks was part of my strategy to make myself a more consistent income throughout the year. Because people tend to buy my ebooks most in the winter when they're thinking about wanting to garden and seed starting and getting everything organized.
Planning, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. And I mean, they still buy throughout the summer and stuff, but it's nice because I'm not getting that traffic in the winter. So it evens out a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, where are you at now? How many books do you have at this point?
I have 11.
Okay.
I'm coming out with number 12 sometime this week.
Ooh.
And then I recently did a trade show. And before this trade show, I was like, okay, this is the last ebook. I am not writing an ebook for a long time. And then I did that trade show. I'm like, oh no, I'm writing two more ebooks. Right.
So, you have also created some of those ebooks that you've made are also available as hard copies now. Not
Yeah.
all of them, but a few of them.
Yes.
And you also have some other digital products which have also turned into hard copy products. Like you have a couple of different garden planners that you've created.
Yes. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I gotta say though, I don't recommend doing the hard copy thing yourself. I initially did it myself because I thought I would make more money off of it. But for the price of printing out your books and then the time it takes to mail it out, and I mean, I do account for the shipping and everything, but you've also got to know yourself. Like mailing things out is not a task that I'm good at. I forget about it easily, and then my people maybe don't get their stuff as fast. So I think one of my big goals is just to move everything on Amazon as much as I initially did not want to do it. But I think
Yeah.
for me, it's a better decision.
Yeah, and Amazon has some cool print on demand features. So your
Yes.
book actually isn't printed until somebody buys it. And
Yeah.
yeah, so there's other platforms out there that will do the same thing for you, I think.
I think Lulu will. Like that's where I get my books printed, but I get them all sent to me instead of using their print on demand.
Right. There's another one. Oh, shoot. The name is just like right on the tip of my tongue. I will find that, everyone, and I will put it in the show notes. So you didn't put all these books out all at once. Like this has been an ongoing process over a couple of years, I think, for you.
Yeah, I would say most of the ebooks were written during 2020,
Mhm.
and it wasn't necessarily like a pandemic project. It was just before the pandemic happened. That's sort of what I had in my mind was going to be the big focus of 2020.
Okay. And how have the books as a whole performed for you? Like are they a significant percentage of your overall revenue, or are they still gearing up? How do they sell throughout the year? Like I have a lot of questions about how.
Yeah. No, they actually do quite well. They are a significant portion of my income. Like, of course, ads are the main thing.
Right.
I don't
Yes.
know if that will ever necessarily change, but the ebooks, so the first year I was quite surprised how much money they made and that it doubled the second year. So it'll be interesting to see if I can, go for the triple
Mm-hmm.
this year or if that's sort of where the sales are sitting.
And what do you account for to double your revenue over the course of 1 year?
Mhm.
What do you account for that? Like that's a big accomplishment in any revenue stream to double your
Yeah,
revenue. So
definitely. What I'm thinking is that it was probably YouTube because I feel like the YouTube follower is a lot, or I guess subscriber is a lot more committed to you and your journey and investing in you. So I
right,
think having those links in my YouTube video definitely helped because, the video has built a lot of trust in me and my possible products.
right.
And then the other thing was that I was also very intentional about making like what I like to call a spider web so that there was multiple access points to see my ebooks. They would, hear about them through my emails. There's Pinterest pins that are directly to the emails. And then those books are also advertised at the end of tons of blog posts. So there's this whole strategy that even if they don't buy from the end of a blog post, you read enough of my cut flower content or my perennial content, you'll be like, I've seen this book about 10 times. Maybe I should check it out.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. One of the sort of tropes that's out there is that it takes 7 touch points before somebody is ready to buy from you. And that doesn't mean you need to force something down their throat. It just
No.
means it has to be there in the background.
Yeah, like you can just occasionally do an Instagram story about it. Or one thing we did that was pretty successful since my Instagram buyers maybe don't purchase quite as soon is we made a carousel in the main feed about a problem that my ebook solves. And then at the end, it was like, if you need more help with this problem, you can get Cut Flowers Made Simple. It's the fastest way to grow a backyard cut flower garden, and it worked really well.
Yeah, simple things like that. I think the one thing though, that you do have to be very diligent about when you do build an ebook empire, ebook library, is that you have to remember that they don't sell themselves. You do have to promote them
Yeah.
consistently throughout the year. And I think I know with my clients, the people that I design books for,
Hmm.
it's not the writing of the book that they struggle with. It's not putting the book together. It's not having me create a template or a design for them. It's none of that. The hard part for them is when the book is made. and they
Yes.
don't know what to do with it. And they just kind of put it up on their website and maybe send out an email,
Oh no.
and that'll be it. And
No,
then
no.
they struggle with the fact that it didn't sell that well. And it's one of the it's one of the reasons that I've started kind of offering a marketing package for my ebook
Yes.
clients to kind of help them with that. But that's one of the things I have to have a very frank conversation with them about when we start, is that they have to understand, yes, they're investing, because to hire a designer to create a custom ebook, and we'll get into this more in a minute, but that's an investment in yourself.
Really.
It's not super cheap. And so you want to at least make sure you get that investment back. And that's a big part of it. You have to go through this, you have to have a marketing plan for what you're going to do. And if you see yourself creating more than one ebook, and we'll get to that in a minute too, you really do kind of have to have a bigger strategy to make sure that it is going to be successful. Because if you do consistently market, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to bring Kristen on to talk about this, because she's got a substantial ebook library, and she markets it consistently every day. I'm a gardener, so I do read Kristen's blog, and I follow her on social. And so I see her content regularly, and I see her ebooks being showcased regularly. I never feel like I'm being pushed into buying an ebook.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, no, never. And yet they're there, and every now and then I think, oh, maybe I should get this or whatever, but the timing's not right. And I would have bought your garden planner this year, except I had already bought one. But when I saw yours, I was like,
Sorry.
So, but the point being is that she's currently top of mind for me now. If I do have a gardening issue that I want some help with, I'm pretty confident that somewhere Kristen's going to have something for me. It might just be a blog post or a video, but it could be a book.
And you
And
know, and after a while, your followers will just DM you in your inbox and say, "Hey, have you written an ebook or a blog post or anything
mhm.
about X problem?" And it's really nice.
Yeah, because they trust you. They're looking for you. It's like, well, Kristen helped me out before, so maybe she can help me out again.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is part of what an ebook can do for you. So if you're wondering, like, should I go down this path? Is it worth it? It's going to be time. It's going to be an investment. But really, first and foremost for me personally, is there another revenue stream? And that I just like to have multiple revenue streams. It just makes me feel much more
Totally.
comfortable in my business.
Um, just going back a little bit to the investment that an ebook is, I just want to encourage your listeners, like whenever I debut a new ebook, I don't think I've ever made more than 20 sales in the first week.
Okay, good
It's
to
just how
know.
it is. I
Yeah.
think you really have to like put the success of your ebook or judge it after a whole year.
Yes, very true. And as you said, your first year you did well, but your second year you doubled your sales. Like, it
Yeah,
was really a long-term game for you. It was not
totally.
one and done. So I think that's something you really need to think about, yes, when you're getting into this. Um, but it also, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, and you just confirmed it, it
Mhm.
makes you a thought leader in
Yes.
your niche. And you just said, now you have people emailing and DMing you and saying, have you made a book about this? Like,
Yeah.
so, and it's also good for brand awareness. You just mentioned that you did a trade show this past weekend. It was like a home and garden type show.
Yes.
And so you had, I believe you had printed copies of your book. Uh,
I did, yes.
So right there, that's helping with your brand awareness. Like, people walk
Yeah.
through the aisles and maybe they didn't buy anything, but all of a sudden they're like, hey, here's this woman in Saskatoon where I am too. She's a gardening expert. She has books. Like, immediately when people see books, they're like, oh, they must know what they're talking about. They wrote a book.
Yes, exactly. And there was a surprising amount of people who said to me, I'm not quite ready to buy this today, but is it online? I'm like, yes, you can buy
Yes.
all of these as ebooks. They're like, oh, fantastic. I'll check you out.
Absolutely. And so by doing all of that, increasing your revenue streams, becoming a thought leader, brand awareness, you also build a bigger community around what you're doing.
Hmm.
Yes. So I think those are like the big four when it comes to why creating an ebook can be a good strategy. And I want to point out before we go too far that, like, Kristen is a content creator. So you're a blogger, you have a lot of content already there.
Yes.
But for people who are maybe more makers or crafters or artists or even musicians and are kind of thinking, like, how is this going to work for me?
Mm.
I just want to say, like, if you're an artist or DIY websites and crafting websites are huge. Like, there is a
Yeah.
huge group of people out there who want to know how to paint, how to color with markers, how to make, how to knit, and so there's opportunities there for you to create products around that if you're an expert in those particular niches, or any niche. If you're a photographer, I follow a lot of photographers because I used to be one,
Hmm.
and many of them have ebooks. A great one to check out is, we talk about him on the show a lot, but is David Duchemin, and he has an entire ebook shop. He's been running this for years, and he's not the only person who makes the books. He brings in other photographers
Okay.
and helps them sell and market. So the point being that you don't need to be a writer to do this. You don't need to be a
No,
blogger to do this. You just need to have something to say or something to show people.
totally.
Yes. This is why I'm a big believer in ebooks. There's a few different points, I think, in the process where people get stuck. And I think the very first one is, you may have an idea for a book, but you're not sure how to turn it into a book.
Right.
And so for you, Kristen, when you had that first idea for that seed saving book, at any point did you go, I don't know how to do this? Like, how do I take my knowledge and my pictures that I just took and turn them into something that's consumable?
There definitely was that moment. And you know what? My ebooks, they look terrible when I'm just starting to write them because I will put them on Canva and basically one page will just be a header that says, I don't know, write about soil amendments. And then the next page will be another header that says, write about mulch. And there'll be like a few random pictures here and there. And then, over the course of a couple weeks, I go through and I'm like, all right, I'm going to tackle this ugly page now.
That's actually not a bad way to do it.
No, and then, at least I have the outline for it. It's already in the document. I'm just one of those people who, like, for me to write a Word document with a nice, pretty outline and write all my text first and then transfer it over is a terrible idea. Like, I don't know, things will get lost in translation. I'll lose the document. Like, I don't know. I'm just that kind of a person.
Yeah, and this is going to be different for everybody depending on how you work.
Mhm.
But what you just said is a great way to do it because, and by the way, Canva is a great tool to create your first ebook in. Um, but essentially, by doing it that way, you are creating an outline and a layout at the same time. Like, it's
Yes. And
very, very rough and basic, but
yeah.
it's there and it's helping you get your thoughts onto the page. I do almost exclusively recipe ebooks. I do other types, but usually my clients are in the food space.
Mhm.
And so one of the things I tell them when they come to when people come to me, they usually have an idea for a book. Like, I want to write a book about ice cream, or I want to write a book about, easy weeknight dinners.
Yes.
Cool. That's great. And so, but then they're stuck. They don't really know where to go next. And so one of the things when you're working with a designer, and this can work very well when you are doing your book yourself, is I tell them I don't want any formatting. Like, send me your
Right.
text it can be in a text edit document. I don't care. You don't have to worry about formatting it because I'm going to take that all and
Mhm.
format it for you as part of the overall look of the book. So that's another way you can do it, is to just get the content onto the page in
Yes.
some form, and then you can get somebody to help you figure out how to lay it
Well,
all out.
and I've got to say, like, if I knew your service existed, I probably would have used it after like the second or the third ebook because that formatting stuff on Canva takes a lot of time. And the template, sure, they have templates on Canva, but they're not very helpful for writing an ebook. And you really do kind of have to create your own thing and think about what makes sense. And I know that if I ever took my ebooks to someone like you, you would probably cry a little bit. You'd be like, this is so inconsistent.
Well, I think it's funny because I do have one client. She had published multiple books before she
Mhm.
came to me, and she had hired a few different people, and she had also done them herself.
Right.
And she came to me and she said, I really don't care how much this is going to cost because I've done this myself a few times and I know how long it takes me to
Yes.
do it. So I would rather just pay somebody who's going to do a better job.
Yeah. And you know what? You get to that point after a while. Maybe your first one you like want to try to do it yourself and save money, but by the fourth one, you just want to hand it off.
And I think there's lots of different ways you can hand it off, and there's lots of different ways you can create an ebook. It doesn't have to be super pricey.
No.
Um, it really depends on how you want to go about it. I think the first challenge really is coming up with that first idea.
Yes.
And I think once you come up with the first idea, I don't know if this happened for you, but once that first idea comes, sort of the others tend to all kind of start to, it's like that's the one that opens the floodgate.
No, it really is because once you realize well, okay, it's not super easy, but how easy in relative terms it is to write an ebook and solve people's problems, then every time when you're listening to your audience and you notice one of those big, hairy problems coming up again, you're like, oh, all right, I'll just write another ebook.
Yeah, it's funny because I've had several clients who have come to me and they just want to do one book, just going to do one book.
Yeah.
And they get the first one out there and they start selling it. And then they come back to me a month later. It's like, I've had another idea, but
Yep.
what do you think about this? So, yeah, once that first one gets out there, it's like with anything new. When we do something new, we're always very tentative at first. And then we get it out there and we realize, hey, that wasn't so bad. I could do that
Yeah,
again.
exactly. And I mean, I don't know what it's like in other niches, but I also find that, there's a lot, not a lot, but there is about 25% of an ebook that I could copy and paste from other ebooks because the information is exactly the same.
Yeah.
Probably any gardening book I'm going to write, there needs to be a little discussion about light and frost dates, and I don't have to rewrite those things again.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit because I think this is something that trips a lot of people up, is that they think when they sit down to write an ebook, it has to be all brand new content that
Definitely
nobody's seen
not.
before.
No.
No. And this is something I try to tell people. A lot of the people I work with do have blogs as part of their business, and they're doing recipes, and they're like, I'd like to do an ebook, but I really don't want to develop 25 brand new recipes just for an ebook. And I'm like, just pick 25 recipes off your blog. Nobody will care.
No, no one does. I buy bloggers ebooks, or sorry, buy bloggers recipe books because I like to buy recipe books from any
Yes.
blogger that I've met that's a food blogger. And most of their recipe books, I would say 75% is recipes on their blog, and there's only a few new ones, and I don't care. I
Yes.
just want to hold that recipe book in my hands.
It's not even necessarily holding it in your hands. It's just there's a lot of people out there who just want all the content they need in one spot and they're willing to
Yes.
pay for it.
Yeah, just to make it convenient.
The only thing you have to do when you do repurpose content is like if virtually everything in the book is on your website, just be upfront with people.
Yes.
Like if these recipes are all on the website or this content can be found through these various different posts, but most people, I would say like 99% of people do not care.
Well, and you know what? That one or two those people who like would have cared. As long as you warn them, then great. They're not going to buy your book and you don't have to deal with a customer service issue when they're super unhappy.
Yes, yes. If you're not upfront about the fact that
Yes.
they can find that content, then you will have people saying, I want a refund. I could have got
Mhm.
this all on your website.
And I mean, you know what? Refunds happen.
Yeah.
I've had a few. I feel like, there's maybe 2 to 5 every year, but like that's not a big deal.
No, I think most people, I think it depends on how you price your books as well,
Yeah.
and we can get into that. But once you've got it out there, once you've had your idea, yeah, do not be shy about repurposing content. As I said, I work with a lot of food bloggers, and I don't think I've done a single book that has been all new recipes at
Oh,
all. I'm just trying to think. I don't think I've done one that's been
mm,
all new recipes. Some will have one or two new recipes, and the others will be off the blog or something. So those
right.
recipes will be like an ebook exclusive kind of thing. So don't worry about that. And as Kristen says, she reuses chunks of content throughout all her books. So you don't need to rewrite that and reinvent the wheel every time.
Oh,
So let's talk about getting your book made, because that's another big stumbling block, especially if
right.
you especially if you do not feel particularly good at laying things out, or
Mm,
graphic design, or any of that kind of thing. You mentioned you used Canva for your first book. Is
yes.
that essentially what you use for all your books at this point?
Yeah, it's still what I use.
Yep.
The only thing that I don't like about it is that you can only have an ebook that's 99 pages. You can't go over that.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's good to
Yeah.
know.
I mean, I don't know, maybe they've changed it, but when I transferred over the course into an ebook, we ran into that issue. So then I had to get creative, like, how can I keep this under 99?
Right. That's good to know. It's not uncommon for recipe books to go over 100 pages, so
Right.
that's good to know. So yes, there are multiple ways you can go about doing this. You can DIY it. There are lots of places where you can buy pre-made templates that work either with Canva or with Adobe InDesign, which is one of Adobe's products that is specifically for laying out books, magazines, posters, that
Hmm.
kind of thing. And I use both as a graphic designer. I'm very comfortable in both. If I'm doing a more complex book, I use InDesign. I use InDesign mostly because it's just what I'm most familiar with and I can be very
Right.
quick in it. But for the average person out there, you'd probably want to start with a Canva template.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just curious, what makes a book complex from a graphic standpoint?
So, one of the really brilliant things that InDesign can do is that you can set up paragraph and character styles, which
Okay.
mean that, like, particularly for a recipe book, where you have so many different pieces. So, you have the recipe title, you have head notes, you have ingredients, you have instructions, you have pictures, you have tips. I am able to set up a paragraph style or a character style for, I want the ingredients section to always render like this, or I want the,
Okay.
yeah, which is super nice. One of the other things that I can do very quickly in InDesign is make fractions look like proper little fractions,
Oh, yes.
which you cannot do in Canva.
No,
So, and for some people don't care, but I have had people who've been like, no, I want the nice little fractions.
of
And
course.
so that's actually something that you can write a little tiny snippet of code for in InDesign so that it can go through a whole document and immediately turn that 1/2 into half,
Right.
without you having to go back. It's also really nice because if you're designing and you get halfway through and you're like, I really don't like this font I'm using for my recipe titles,
Hmm.
I want to change it, but that's going to be like 15 recipes that I've already done. And so all I have to do is just go into the character style and say, I want to change the font to this. And it just automatically changes the font through the whole document for that particular piece of the document.
I think Canva has finally made a feature in paid Canva that you can maybe do that. But if they did, like it's very, very recent. And as you're saying this, I'm just thinking about how if that would happen to me in Canva, I'd just be like, no,
Exactly. That's what
it's
most
too
people would do.
much.
Say, no, this is the font we're using today.
Yeah.
So it makes it very quick and easy, and it yeah, it's just for me personally, there's just things that I can't do as elegantly in Canva as I could
Right.
in InDesign. But with Canva, you can still, I mean, this is the thing with design is that the only person who might notice that your fraction is not a cute little fraction and instead is a 1/2
Mm.
might be you.
It's true, yes.
Canva is a really great place to get started. There are, I think if you have the paid version of Canva, there are templates specifically for creating ebooks
Hmm.
that you can use. You can also buy templates you can buy templates on Etsy. You can buy templates through sites like Creative Market,
Yeah.
very inexpensively. And when you buy them, you have a couple of options of what you can do. First of all, you can buy it and you can DIY the whole thing.
Hmm.
Just take it, sit down, fiddle with it, try and add your brand colors and your logo and all that kind of stuff. Or you can hire a designer to customize the template for you, which is another,
Oh,
yeah. So I do this quite often. This is, you can hire a designer. It's cheaper than hiring a designer to do a custom design for you.
right.
Instead, they're just taking the template and they're just updating it for you to make it look more like you. And then they could also potentially put the content in for you, or you could do that yourself.
Hmm.
Or so there's different levels of how you can get this done. You might hire a designer to customize the template, but you might have your virtual assistant actually put the content into the template.
That's really smart. I never thought that there was any sort of in
Oh
between.
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Lots of graphic designers who work on ebooks will also sell their own templates that you can use.
Hmm. So if you like somebody's work, then I mean, you're probably going to like their template.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things to keep in mind when you are buying, if you go the template route, and you'll notice this on places like Creative Market. I don't know how Canva does this. I'm assuming if you have the paid version of Canva, it's good. But something to look into is you want to make sure that you're buying a commercial license for the template
Yes.
because
Yeah.
that will allow you to sell your product.
That's interesting because like I do know some bigger bloggers who sell their own templates. I don't know if there's ever been any sort of mention of a
Mm.
commercial license. That's
You,
interesting.
yeah, you'll see it on Etsy as well. Like it'll be like the person selling it will say you can use this for personal use or you can
Right.
do this, but if you want to sell it commercially, contact me for more information. Or on Creative Market makes it so easily. They just have
Yeah.
3 license options. You pick the one you want, and one will let you sell up to 10,000 copies, and I think another will let you sell up to 250,000 copies. So
Right.
and they're still extremely reasonable. So for what you're getting, so
Yeah.
under $100 easily.
Yeah. That's where I get all of my.
Yeah, probably under $50, really.
Oh yeah. I would say even under 30,
Yeah,
maybe.
it
Yeah.
it
Like,
depends on how many options you get in the template. Some templates will have you know 10 or 11 layouts, and others may only have 2 or 3 layouts. So it's going to vary from template to template. But
but I mean, especially if you're going into this your first time, I think that 30 to $50 is so worth it.
yeah,
The time
absolutely.
save. Even if you're like essentially paying yourself $10 an hour, you're gonna save for sure 3 hours, trust me.
Yes, and you're going to have a template that you can potentially reuse for future books.
Yes.
And that's if you do have a bigger ebook strategy in mind where you'd like to build up a full library, this is where working with a graphic designer might be the best option for you and have them create a custom template that is just for you. And this is actually what I do with most of my clients is they come to me, they hire me to create them a template that's theirs. They get to have creative input into it. They get to have the final say on how everything looks. And then they can either take that template and fill it with their content and use it for as many books as they like, maybe just changing the colors here and there, or they can have me put the content in for them. So it's going to cost you a little bit more to work to get a custom design because you're the only one who will ever get to use it. But it is a great option if, like I said, you're looking to produce multiple books and you want them all to have a similar look and feel and consistent branding throughout. So,
And I would say, especially in the food niche, when so many people could potentially have those recipe ebooks, to have something that's very you would be really important.
yes. Yeah. If you're just going to do one book, two books maybe, by all means go the template route. It's
Yeah,
fast, it's cheap, and it'll get it out there. But and the other thing is, if you do decide to create more books, you can always go back and update those older books to look more like,
really.
yeah. So once you've got your book all good to go and it's out there in the world, and or it's about to be out there in the world,
Yeah.
the next step is like, how do you sell it? And this is where people get so stuck.
Yes.
In terms of, first, the big hang up my clients have is pricing. That's where they get really stuck before they even get to the marketing piece. And how did you address that? Like, did you really hover over pricing for a while?
I definitely worried about it, and I probably priced my products a little bit too cheap.
Yeah.
But with Cut Flowers Made Simple, that was the one where I started at $10. And I said it's $10 for the first week, and I would like ideally some feedback because the price will go up once I make the second set of um, edits, I guess, right?
Right.
Because I had not really written many ebooks, right? It was the second one, and I needed to know if I was actually solving people's problems. So in my mind, it was like, in exchange for being a guinea pig, you get a cheap price.
Right.
So then I think I increased it to $12 after that like 2 week promotion. And then once I had made that second round of edits, I increased it to $14. It still sold really well. And then I think after a year, I increased it to 19 because I saw the success that people were having with that ebook and the results that they were getting from it. And so I'm like, no, this is actually a $19 ebook. The value is totally there in what the customer is getting. Now, that said, some of my ebooks are $24 because I'm like, so for example, my Constant Color Garden one, it's a perennial book about always having something blooming, and especially in our zone 3 climate where I live, that's really challenging, and there's nothing else on the market out there like it as far as I know. So like for value, it's definitely a 24. But something like I have a book called Weeds versus Plants, and in that one I just have pictures of what all the different common vegetables and a couple of perennials and a few cut flowers, kind of what they look like at the earlier stages of growth, so that you don't weed your plants and
Yes.
weeds. And so, that is a valuable book, but at the same time, I'm like, it's not as many pages. It's a very, very, very niche topic that people need for like 2 weeks out of the year. So I think that one's like $7 or $9 or something like that.
Yeah, so definitely the specificity
Yeah.
of the content, the length of the book,
The
and
results.
the results that people. This is the big one: the results and the value. Like you mentioned multiple times, it's not just about what's in the book; it's the value it brings to the person
Yes.
who's using the book. And most of us know that we are quite willing to spend money if it solves a problem we're having.
And I mean, I know this person called Coach Greg on YouTube, and he's in the weight loss industry, and he sells a $200 cookbook. That's an ebook. And people buy it.
Yeah, there's a food blogger, Canadian food blogger.
Mhm.
Her name is escaping me right now. her name is Audrey. The name of her site is escaping me, but
Okay.
she was one of the kind of early vegan bloggers, and she has a very specific niche.
Hmm.
She focuses on raw vegan desserts.
Oh, I think I've seen her stuff.
Yes, and she has one book. She may have done others, but for the longest time, she just had one book, and she sold it at what at the time was an inordinately high price tag. I think it was about
Right.
$50,
Right.
which was kind of unheard of for an ebook at that point in time. She's had it for years, and I will find it and I'll link to it. But and she had multiple levels of it. You could just get the book with the recipes, I think, and then
Mhm.
there was another version you could get that came with videos of how to make the
Oh, yeah.
recipes. So she had different steps that you could purchase at. But this was a super specific niche of
Yes.
particularly like how to color your desserts
Mhm.
without using any with and keeping them raw and vegan. So super specific and a very but the audience that she was targeting it at, they wanted that. So they were more than happy to pay it. And I know she did very
Yeah.
well with the book. So
And if you can't find that information anywhere
yeah.
else, then yeah, I think that's worth it. And also, if your ebook is about any sort of business thing that's going to make your customer money, then
Mm-hmm.
any of those like SEO ebooks. I know Lena Gott has sold traffic transformation for years, and I think that's like a $60 ebook. And it's maybe, less than 100 pages ish, but there's super valuable information in there that can make you money. So, of course, it should be more.
Absolutely. A $60 or even $100 SEO book could potentially turn your business into a six-figure a year business,
Yeah, so
right?
it's worth it.
That's worth it. Um, Same, I think, this isn't a book, but you have uh, your backyard
Backyard
garden
business. Yeah.
course, right? And
Yes.
you're teaching people how to set up a business and
Yes.
make money from it. So there's a value in that. And I think that's really important for people to remember when they're thinking about their pricing. So I definitely have clients who sell their books too low, and I try to encourage them to bump it up, and they're very resistant to that, and that's fine. But one of the benefits of starting out a little bit high is it gives you room to run promotions, which is something
Yes.
to think of as well, because you'll often see this in the ebook world, particularly Black Friday, Cyber Monday. A
Hmm.
lot of uh, book creators will sell their books at a great price. And because you're not selling a physical product that has to be made every time, you have a much bigger margin to play with.
Yeah, and then if you need a quick injection of cash,
Mm-hmm.
you can have that sale and hopefully get it.
Another thing that works really well with ebooks is bundling them.
Yes.
So, is this something you've done, and how's
Yeah,
that worked for you?
I have the ultimate cut flower bundle. So I bundle four of my cut flower books. And then it fills that really nice in between need for someone who like wants to know more than just a backyard cut flower garden, but they're maybe not selling or they're not ready to do a business, but they're kind of thinking about it. So it's had pretty good sales and it sells for like the $50 mark.
Yes, I have a client who has written a book on how to bake the perfect cake. And then she
Yes.
also has another book that is her ultimate cake recipe book that includes, I think it's 50 recipes in it. And she sells the two together as a bundle. It makes total sense because, you know, her how to bake the perfect cake book has all the tips and how to solve your cake fails and all the things that when you bake that cake you're like, I need help with this, I need help with that, this isn't working. So to sell the two together is just makes sense, right? And then
Yeah,
your your reader or your audience feels like they're getting a deal.
totally. And like we want our ebooks to be as easy of a yes as
Yeah,
possible without devaluing our work.
exactly. And that's where marketing comes into play. So when it comes to marketing tactics, there are I was going to say millions. There's not
Oh,
millions, but there's a lot of ways that you can market your books. And this is something you do so well. So, what are some of the things that have worked really well for you and some of the things that haven't maybe been so great?
okay. Well, we just talked about those like flash sales.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, I looked at my coupons the other day to see how many people actually took them up or took me up on it. I maybe sold two flash, right? Like my people do not care about flash sales for the most part. But I think what works really well for me is the first week that an ebook goes out, have a little bit of a deal. Um, and then I guess just my general strategy of having it kind of be everywhere.
Yeah.
I, I know you have a really good strategy for selling ebooks that I stole from you. Is just to at the bottom of all of your emails just have a little graphic be like this week in the shop.
Yes, this works really well for. I have a couple of clients who have multiple ebooks and multiple digital products actually, and
Mm,
that's what they do. Is at the foot of every email, it's always the last thing in the email, so it doesn't detract from the content of the newsletter. But at the bottom, it's. I encourage people to do graphics. Emails tend to be quite, people respond to visuals.
it's true.
So, like a bright graphic at the bottom with the cover of the ebook, and just a reminder, like, hey, I have this book and you can buy it. And
Yeah, and it's just one more touch point.
yeah,
And
and if you can tie it into the theme of the email, which I think for someone like Kristen, because you've got so many different books on different topics, that's
mhm,
probably fairly easy for you to do, that you can put an
yes.
appropriate book into the email. And so you're not going to sell hundreds doing this,
Oh,
but you will probably get, depending on the size of your list, um, 1 to 2 sales an email.
yeah. And
Yeah,
it's funny. It's always the warm people because the sales for me, they always happen within like the first 2 hours
yeah,
after sending out the email.
yeah, yeah. It's not something they go back and reopen the email 4 days later. But in the moment, if you just happen to catch them on the day where they're thinking about like,
Yes.
I need to go buy my, seeds for the year, or I've been thinking about a garden for the last 2 days, like doing a cut flower garden. Oh,
Yeah.
there's Kristen's book. Timing's perfect.
Yeah. And
You,
it's funny because you also mentioned like my backyard business course, which is a really high price tag. And you would be surprised how many people have purchased and joined the course in the last month. And I haven't even particularly promoted it, but it just must have been like in the back of their mind. They recently watched some YouTube
mhm.
videos on it or whatever, and they've joined in the last month. So you just never know.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't know who's watching and who's listening, and you don't know when you're going to hit them at just the right moment
Hmm.
in their, I talked about this on a previous podcast episode with Heather Travis,
Yeah.
where I was talking about Vessi sneakers. And
Yes, I remember that one.
yeah, so Vessi's a Vancouver company. They make waterproof sneakers for people who live in Vancouver where it rains all the time. And I literally start getting these ads in my Facebook feed around August
Yeah.
constantly. And, it's just like just one day came home from walking the dog and my feet were wet and I was just fed up. you know
Like, I
and
want
it's
the
like
sneakers.
there's the ad and it's like, yes, I want to know more about the sneakers. So you don't know, but probably if I hadn't been primed all through those previous
Yeah.
months, I wouldn't have thought about Vessi. I wouldn't have known where to go, but they just happened to be there, and I was their target customer, somebody who lives in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Right?
And you just can't get emotional about these things. Like, so
Mm.
your ebook only sold 5 copies the first week. So what? You've got another year to like pump those
Yes.
up.
This is the thing you have to think about is it's really is a long game, and you have to find ways to promote those books throughout the year. You do something that I really like, which is having something in every single blog post that
Hmm.
directs somebody to one of your books.
Yeah.
And
That it's made such a difference.
it's a great way for you to capture all that SEO traffic that you
Hmm.
get. So these,
I get quite a bit. So
yeah, so they might not be people who are on your email list or who follow you on social. They're just somebody who Googled, how do I grow cut flowers?
yep, and there I was the solution.
That's right. So it's a great way to capture those people and potentially turn them into long term customers and newsletter subscribers and all
Yeah.
of those things. You also use YouTube a lot, which you mentioned.
Yes.
That's another great way, as Kristen mentioned. I've found the same thing on YouTube, that people there tend to be purchasers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I'm gonna debut the new seed starting ebook this week on YouTube, and we'll see. I'm curious about the results.
Yeah, I'd love to hear how it goes. Um, and so once you've hit on your pricing, another thing that you can do is plot out your promotions for the year
Hmm.
and create social media graphics for them and have them all kind of planned out when you're going to promote which books based on your seasonal calendar. I would imagine that's pretty important for you because
It is, yes. And it really sucks when I miss the window. But the
yes.
other nice thing too is like you can reuse the same graphic on social media a
Hmm.
few weeks later. So many times I'm finding this year I'll have answered a gardening problem about something maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago, and I'll notice it again in people's comments or in my DMs. I'm like, okay, great. I'm gonna just reuse the same graphic. Maybe I'll modify it just a teeny tiny bit, but like again,
Hmm.
you really don't need to reinvent the wheel once you've invented it.
Nope, and that's something you can also get a VA to help you with,
Hmm.
who can just create all those graphics like that. You can create in Canva, no problem.
Yeah.
Super easy. I it's that's something I do for clients is they can purchase some social media templates from me to
Hmm.
use to launch their book, and then they can use them throughout the year where they just have to swap the photos in and out, and it's done with their branding. So there's lots of different ways that you can get those books in front, but the important part is you have to consistent, like I don't think we can stress this part enough. You
No,
have to
cannot.
consistently promote those books day in, day out, week in, week out through the entire year, and that's how you will get consistent sales. And I think that's one of the interesting things is that very often with an ebook, it's not that you have this huge rush of sales at any given point. It's trickle
No.
sales.
Mm. But it's nice because, you can be like hanging out with your kids on a Saturday, look at your inbox and be like, oh, I made $100 today and I didn't do
Yeah,
anything.
a little cha-ching sound on your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely one of those things where you want to really plot it out in advance. And before you know it, like you look at the end of the year and all of a sudden you realize, like, wow, I did $10,000 in sales in ebooks this year.
Yeah.
That's not a small number.
And it is totally doable
Yes,
at $10,000.
particularly if you've got multiple books.
Yeah, I would say if you had one, like maybe to expect something more like 500 to 1,000. But
Yeah. But yes, if you've got multiple books, um, we with my old business we did a food blog planner that we sold
mhm,
for like $15, and of course we sold a lot of them in December and early
yeah,
January. Like that's when we make the bulk of our
of
revenue.
course.
But even so, throughout the year we would sell, you know, $40 here, $50 there, throughout, just consistent revenue throughout
Yeah,
the
and it
year.
all adds up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've probably covered most of it. Was there anything we missed?
I don't think so. No, this has been a really good conversation.
Yeah. So I hope this gives all of you listening some ideas of how this could potentially work for you and a chance to sit down. And I think one of the things I would recommend is to just sit down and brainstorm all the things that you could potentially create a book on. And it doesn't have to be a big book. 10 pages is an ebook.
Exactly, 10 pages, sell it for $5. Like, see what happens.
Yeah, try something out. Just keep in mind that you have to be consistent with it. But a great way to kind of brainstorm is to just sit down and, like Kristen said right at the beginning of the episode, write down all the questions people ask you on a regular basis in your business. Maybe it's what type of paints you use. What do I need to get started taking pictures? Like, what's the best? That's the question I always used to get asked. What's the best camera? Like I've tried them all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that'd be
But
expensive.
maybe you could turn that into a book of what to look for when buying your first camera. That might be something that could work. Could be something like 5 simple knitting stitches that every knitter should know, or there's so many different things that you can do if you just sit down and start to brainstorm and think about what it is that you get asked on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then get out there and take some pictures and write that book.
Right. Just do it.
Just do it. I know. This is the
You
thing we
know,
talk about all the time. Just do it. Give it a try. That first one does not have to be a huge investment. There's lots of ways to DIY it. One thing we didn't mention, you could even write it in Word, like a Word or a Google Doc.
yes, totally could. Whatever feels easy.
Yes.
Just so you can get it out there, and like you can always go back and edit it. That's the beauty of
Yeah.
the internet.
Yes, it is. There's also a really fantastic podcast for those of you who may be interested. It is The Creative Pen by Joanna Penn. She's a self-published author. Her podcast has been going for like 10 years, I think. She's close to
wow.
she's close to episode 600. And she talks about everything self-published. So this is everything from, mainly people who are writing novels, but she
Right.
talks to a lot of people who are writing business books. She talks about a lot of the mechanics of selling books on Amazon and different platforms like that, because that is something you can do. Kristen mentioned it at the beginning that she'd like to move over to Amazon for her print on demand. And so there's many ways, but that's a really great resource. I'll put a link to that in the show notes if you're at all thinking about doing this. You can browse her episode catalog and find the ones that are pertinent to you. And I think that's it for this week. So, Kristen, thank you so much. This was fun. It was really great to have you here. And I hope everybody goes out and starts brainstorming their first ebook.
Yeah, and then tag us.
Yes, we would love to hear. We'd love to hear what you get up to. So please do that. Where can people find you online, Kristen?
You can find me at shiftingroots.com. On Instagram, I'm at shifting_roots. And my Facebook, YouTube, all that jazz is all just Shifting Roots.
Awesome. We'll put links to all of that in the show notes so you can find Kristen easily. But yeah, please do tag us. We'd love to see what you put out there. And Kristen, good luck on the launch of your next book this week.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody, that's it for this week. I will be back next week with episode 100, which is crazy.
Ooh.
I know, it's crazy. So that's very exciting. I will be back next week with all of you then. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshелookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshелookedup.com or come say hi on Instagram at andshелookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.